Two monster online video cameras. The GH5 is at this point a staple in the video realm. It has legitimate pro features at a price that was unthinkable just 3 years ago. The XT3, on the other hand, is a brand new potential usurper to the GH5 crown. Which one will work best for you for your online content creation? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. These two cameras, well, there's no two ways about it. They are both fantastic video capable cameras, but they both have subtle differences that might make one a little better than the other for you. The GH5 is actually one of my favorite cameras of all time. It has the features, specs, and usability all combined into one package to make it something that I just enjoy using. And once I pop the battery grip on this thing, it makes me feel fancy and like I'm a legitimate pro. I'm not, but it makes me feel that way. Anyway, the XT3 released last week and I've been seriously impressed with it so far. On Monday, we found out that the XT3 is a pretty baller camera that not only has a nice APS-C sensor, but also has autofocus for days. And those two things are pretty important when you have quick turnarounds for online content. And if you'd like to get either of these two cameras because, well, they're amazing cameras, there will be links in the description below. First up, let me mention that I am not a professional photographer, nor am I a professional videographer. I make home videos and I make YouTube videos, so this video will be slanted in that direction. I just love cameras. Legitimately, the reason I make YouTube videos at all is I am still fascinated by the fact that we can take these objects, have them record light, process it through my computer, and put it on the internet for the world to see. I mean, it's still amazing. I enjoy it, but you know, I digress. Before we get too deep into the video, let's cover the basic specs of both of these monster cameras to get us all on the same page. And again, the specs will be on online content creation, but I'll still get yelled at in the comments for some photography spec that I didn't talk about. I'm sorry. The GH5 is a micro four thirds camera from Panasonic. It has a 20 megapixel 4/3 sensor, and it has amazing 5-axis in-body image stabilization. It can record internally 4K 30 frames per second, 10-bit 422, and it can do 1080p up to 180 frames per second. It has a bit of a weaker autofocus system using a contrast-based system, but it also has dual UHS-2 card slots, pretty legit. The XT3, on the other hand, is an APS-C mirrorless camera from Fujifilm, and it's pretty shocking the features that are packed into this bad boy. It has a 26 megapixel BSI X-Trans CMOS 4 sensor. It has a hybrid phase detection autofocus system with improved tracking for face and eye detection. Internally, it can record 10-bit 420 and can do 422 over HDMI, but it can also record 4K 60 frames per second, which rivals the GH5, and it's the first camera really to do so. And it also has dual UHS-2 card slots. Additionally, it has a USB-C type connection that can be used to charge the camera while in use, which is something that I really like because I use these cameras to do a lot of live streaming. Long story short, both are capable video monsters. I mean, legitimately, both are so good, it's really surprising. Only a few years ago, these kind of specs were saved for the highest of the high-end cinema cameras, and now we have them in these very small, you know, relatively speaking, packages. Physically, the cameras have a very different philosophy. The GH5 is a really big camera housing a really small sensor, thereby giving it the ability to do some really interesting things, such as legit 5-axis stabilization and unlimited recording times. Another benefit is it also feels great. Seriously, this is my favorite camera ever for handling. It's just about the perfect size for my hands. It's not too heavy, but it's also not too light. It feels so great just to hold. I mean, I have the battery grip on, but normally it just feels great. It comes equipped with a nice array of physical buttons and dials, but that's not all. It also has one of the most customizable feature sets I've seen. When you don't like what a button does, you just change it. You can change it to do basically whatever the camera is capable of. Not only that, but it comes equipped with the always useful, fully articulating touchscreen. And something that it doesn't get enough credit for is the built-in preamps are so good. Recording audio straight into the camera isn't something I ever worry about because it is so darn good. The XT3, on the other hand, also physically feels great. It's a little bit smaller and isn't as nice for hand holding, but it's also not the worst I've ever used. It also has a battery grip I don't have, but you can help out a little bit with that. It comes with even more buttons and dials than the GH5. I didn't actually think that was possible, and the majority of them are also customizable. Now, it's not as easy changing them as changing it on the GH5, but the ability to personalize the camera works here too. I like being able to customize the camera to work for me, not me work for the camera. The XT3 has a quasi-articulating screen that works perfectly well for doing behind the camera work, and the preamps, you know, those are pretty darn good too. So after using both cameras, let's compare them on a few different categories that I find are most important for the online content creator, whether that's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook video, etc. First up, image quality. And that's probably the most important to most people. I mean, it's not the most important to me personally, but I understand why people chase technical image quality. Both cameras have the ability to capture fantastic images straight in camera. There are only two really big differences that I want to cover in the image quality front, because let's be honest, both are great. The two things are sensor size and recording limits. For sensor size, the larger APS-C sensor on the XT3 gives you a couple of benefits. It should perform a little bit better in low light, you know, having a larger surface area, and it also gives you more control over your depth of field. It's easier to get a shallower depth of field with a bigger sensor. The GH5 with its smaller sensor can do some things that the XT3 cannot, however. It can record in 4K 60 forever. The smaller sensor generates less heat, and the bigger body of the GH5 allows for recording limits normally only found on pro-level camcorders or cinema cameras. Personally, I really like the eternal picture profile coming out of the Fuji XT3. It's a little less saturated than I normally record for video, but I think it gives everything a really nice, soft, natural look. Of the two cameras, I definitely think it's the best image, and again, I don't do any post-processing as I have a very fast online turnaround, so I don't record in log profiles, but that is a very nice segue to my next comparison. Fiddliness. Seriously, this is the most important aspect for me in a camera system, hands down. A quick definition for those not aware. Fiddliness is how much fiddling with the camera do I have to do to turn it on, hit record, then edit and upload the footage. Basically, more fiddly equals bad. And unfortunately, neither camera really wins this either. The Fuji has some amazing autofocus that will do eye tracking functions in video mode. I love saying that. The footage looks really great straight out of the camera, and it's a joy to use. There's a but here though. But it doesn't actually have a fully articulating screen that makes being in front of the camera so much easier. It also doesn't have any stabilization, which means I need to bring a tripod or slider to record my B-roll when I take the XT3 out and about. The GH5, on the other hand, has amazing stabilization and a very nice and functional touchscreen that makes both being in front of and behind the camera a joy and can be used by itself without needing much stabilization gear. And there's another but here. But the autofocus is terrible. Yes, Panasonic keeps releasing updates to make its depth from defocus system a little more responsive, but there's no way to change how the system works to get focus. I have to keep this thing in manual focus all the time, and I use the Panasonic iOS app to pull focus for me. It works most of the time, but sometimes it can be a hair off and basically ruin a whole shoot. So neither really has it nailed. If the XT3 had a flip out screen or the GH5 had better autofocus, this would be way easier to call and they'd probably be the perfect camera, but this is going to turn into a personal preference, and I'm not yet sure exactly where I fall on that spectrum. I really like a lot about both cameras. I'm still on the fence. And last but certainly not least, the ecosystem of the camera is also hugely important. Both accessories and lenses are crucial to camera functionality, and ultimately one of the reasons that I personally don't want to use a full frame camera long term is the lenses are too big for me. Now I think the APS-C sensor on the Fuji is about the right size to make sure you have nicely sized lenses, but also relatively fast ones that can give you a nice shallow depth of field if that's something you're looking for. However, nothing really comes close in my mind to the GH5 in both its range of accessories and its lenses. I think Micro Four Thirds lenses are awesome for how small they get. Yes, you get a deeper depth of field, but I am past the phase of my online video career that was all about being as wide as possible and as shallow as possible. There's no shame in it. We all get to that point, I promise you. Not only that, but the GH5 has some really nice audio options too, such as the XLR adapter that plugs straight into the hot shoe mount to give you legitimate pro level audio support. Both can use the same monitors and will have a variety of cages, but the XLR adapter for the GH5 and the full HDMI port on the GH5 really make this category lean in Panasonic's favor. So what, right? So which of these two cameras should you get to create your very own online cat videos? Well, like so many things, it really depends. Do you want amazing autofocus, an APS-C sensor, and the ability to record 4K 60 frames per second? Literally the only option on the market right now that's not a cinema camera camera is this Fuji X-T3. The only camera that does what it does. And I think would be great as somebody's main camera. Like, it's really shocking. On the other hand, do you want unlimited record times, awesome audio, and some of the best in-body image stabilization, which means you don't need to bring extra gear with you, then whoo boy, is the GH5 right for you. I mean, really, either is great, and I don't think you could go wrong with either of these two cameras. Heck, get both of them and just make it super easy. I hope I don't end up doing that. Thanks for watching.